In this Warframe guide, we're gonna go over the most important daily and weekly activities that you shouldn't miss if you want to get all the high-end upgrades and shinies fast. I'm gonna give you an overview of what there is and which tasks to focus on, regardless of whether you're still a beginner or an endgame veteran. So, after a massive thank you to all our generous channel members who helped me keep the lights on, well, let's jump right into it. But before we jump into the first activity, I quickly want to give you an overview of how this video is structured. First and foremost, this guide is separated into two main chapters, one for the daily and one for the weekly activities. For each of those two chapters, I'm going to start out with the very easy to access activities that pretty much any tenno out there can do, even if you're still in the early game, and then step by step we're going to get more complex until we reach the very end game stuff. Also, there are a whole lot of activities in this game, and it might seem very overwhelming, so just remember, you do not have to do every single one of those things every day and week. I'm in this video just trying to give you an overview of what there is, so you can pick and choose for yourself what you think is going to be the most important for you. And with that being said, let's now first talk about the dailies. Alright, daily activities. What can you do on a daily basis to obtain upgrades and resources for your entire account? Well, first and most obviously, just log into the game. Even if you don't have time to play, just logging in for the daily login reward is already worth it. Sometimes this might just be a couple of credits or some resources that you don't need at all, but at special login milestones, you actually get some really high value rewards, like you also see an example in the background right here. And in addition to that, the more login days you have, the higher those reward pools that you get on a day-to-day basis will end up being. So, especially now that Warframe is available on the phone on iOS and hopefully also soon on Android, this makes the daily login easier than ever. Activity number 2 would be crafting your daily forma and resources. See, I think we all know that forma are important and that it takes 24 hours to craft one of them. So, even if you don't have a lot of time to play, one thing you should definitely do is refresh your foundry by taking fully built forma out of it and then start building the new one, so that over time you could accumulate a nice stockpile of them. But it's not just forma, there are also other resources and in general things that you can build on a daily basis with reusable blueprints. Just by the way, on the App Store, I think for both iOS and Android, there's an app called the official Warframe Companion app, and this gives you access to your Warframe foundry on the move without actually having to open up the very game itself. All in all, just a great little helper for this. The next thing I want to talk about are your main syndicates that you can access from your orbiter, I think as soon as you reach Mastery Rank 2, was it that, or was it Mastery Rank 4? I'm not exactly sure right now, but it was pretty early in the game. What you can do here is pledge your allegiance to one of those syndicates, and from that point on, a portion of your experience that you get in mission will go towards acquiring standing with that syndicate and another one that is allied to it. Now, the important part here is that you don't only want to gain your daily standing for the syndicate, but also want to make sure that you spend it if you're already maxed out. So, whenever you log in and you see that your syndicate is maxed out, go ahead and buy something from them for the standing. For example, relic packs, but also phosphor packs are very nice because you can turn them into arcanes. This way, you're making sure that you never waste your daily standing income, and over time this just opens up this nice passive quote-unquote reward pool on the side. The next thing I want to talk about is something that is very important, I think, for the very early game players out there, but only until you unlock the index on Neptune, and that would be the Dark Sector missions. See, on the star chart there are missions called Dark Sector missions, which are those nodes with this funky little symbol right here. These, upon completion, will give you a quite generous credit reward, especially for early game players, and if you haven't unlocked the index yet, which is the prime way for many players to farm credits, then doing a Dark Sector mission as your first mission of the day should be the utmost priority for every new player out there, because the first mission of the day gives you double credit rewards, so if you ensure that one of them is going to be your first mission of the day every day, you're never going to struggle with credits in the early game. Up next, and this is a very big one, would be increasing your standing with the quote-unquote world syndicates. You know, I'm talking about stuff like the Ostron and Cetus, the Solaris and Fortuna, and everything like that. Just like with your Orbiter syndicates, also every day you can increase your standing with all of these syndicates, and in your playthrough, sooner or later, you're gonna have to max them out either way, so if you happen to have some time on the side, it's definitely never a bad idea to increase your standing here and there a little bit. I would probably focus on Cetus as well as Deimos first, because there you can access stuff that you need to further progress through the story, but of course, this is just my personal take on this. Up next, I want to talk about the daily sortie. This is something that you can only access after you finish the War Within quest, but once you're done with this, you can get some nice rewards out of this. The sortie is a series of 3 missions that you have access to every single day, and from it you can not only get Kuva, which is a nice resource that you need to reroll Rivens, a bunch of Endo, but you can also get Rivens themselves with quite a high percentage. Doing your daily sortie is never a bad idea to stock up on these really nice resources. Also, something that you will have unlocked once you're done with the War Within, or at least the second dream, will be the focus trees for your operator. Also here, every day you can gain a certain amount of focus that you can then use to improve your operator, unlock more skills, or improve the ones that you already have. The, in my opinion, best way to max out your daily focus fast is building a nuke frame, like for example Saren, Equinox, Gauss, and many others also work. Put a focus lens on them for the focus tree that you're currently working on, and just jump in the Sanctuary Onslaught, take out all the enemies around you, and you're gonna have your daily focus maxed in no time. And the final daily activity that I want to mention would be the Steel Path incursions, which obviously are only available to you if you have unlocked Steel Path. These are a bunch of missions that, if you do them, you gain extra steel essence, which is a resource that you definitely want to have quite some of to buy really nice stuff from Teshin, but we're going to get into that in a bit more detail when we're talking about the weekly stuff right now. And as always, if you could maybe drop a like for the video, that would be huge because it helps me big time with the YouTube algorithm, so cheers so much for your support. But alright, so much for the daily tasks. Let's now take a look at what you can do on a weekly basis in Warframe, and when it comes to the rewards, especially here, you will get the really nice stuff. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. The first and also pretty beginner-friendly topic here would be of course the weekly Nightwave missions. I've talked about the Nightwave in many videos already, so I'm gonna spare you all the details right here, but to put it simply, the Nightwave is sort of a free season pass, and you can access it in the Orbiter right here. While yes, the Nightwave also has daily tasks, these are usually less important and don't give all that much progress, so the most important thing here are your weekly missions, which you can see down here. Now, for most advanced players, it shouldn't be all that much of a problem to just finish all of them in 1 week, but also if you're still a beginner, there will always be very easy to achieve missions like take out 250 enemies or something. Everybody can do that, so no matter if you're early or late game, it's always worth taking a look at the Nightwave once per week and see what you can do to at least advance a little bit, because even the first couple of milestones can net you quite some nice stuff like more inventory slots, Orokin reactors, and much more. My personal tip here would be, especially for the early game players, the Nightwave credits that you earn here can be used in the Nightwave shop to purchase valuable upgrades, and I would always recommend getting the aura mods that are on display here just in case you don't have them already, and after that focus on the Orokin catalysts and Orokin reactors to be able to double the mod capacity of weapons and warframes. One cool tip here that many of you told me about is, instead of buying the reactors and catalysts directly from Nightwave credits, in many cases it's more efficient to actually buy some of the aura mods, then sell those aura mods for platinum to other players, and use the platinum that you made from the sale to buy Orokin reactors and catalysts in the market. This way, in many cases, you're spending less Nightwave credits for more Orokin catalysts and reactors. The next weekly thing that I think pretty much everybody can do is the weekly Ayatan treasure hunt. This is unlocked once you reach Maru's Bazaar on Mars, and what happens here is you play a linear mission in either the Void or the Derelict, and at the end you will be rewarded with a guaranteed Ayatan statue. These statues can be socketed with Ayatan stars in your mod collection, and a fully socketed statue is worth quite a lot of Endo, which you can extract from those statues when you go back to Maru. Now, I think it goes without say that especially for newer game players, this is a crucial trick to get all the Endo that you need to max out the hundreds of mods that you're going to be faced with, but given the fact that it really only takes 2 minutes, even I as a veteran still do it every single week, and it's a great Endo income. Up next though, let's talk about Rivens and especially Kuva. Once you finish the Chains of Harrow quest, so sometime in the early mid-game, you will unlock a node on the star map called Iron Wake. Once per week, you can go to Iron Wake and talk to Palladino to exchange Riven Slivers for Rivens, Kuva, and other valuable stuff. Those Riven Slivers are dropped from Eximus units, so you're probably gonna have a healthy stockpile of them already, meaning it's always worth paying Palladino a visit once per week to get rid of some of them. Same thing, by the way, goes for Archimedean Yonta, who you can visit on the Zeraman 10-0 once you've unlocked it, where also here you can buy a weekly chunk of Kuva for Void Plumes, which either you get by running Zeraman missions, or you could also trade them in for other resources with Archimedean Yonta, so also here, she's worth visiting, especially if you're short on Kuva. And as if 2 weekly vendors aren't enough already, we also need to talk about Acrithis, I still have no idea how to pronounce her, which is the Deviri vendor, who you can visit either in Deviri itself or in the Dormi Zone on the Zeraman 10-0. Acrithis offers a lot of wares for purchase, and of course you always have to know for yourself if you need them or not, but given the fact that most of the stuff here is only obtainable for Pathos Clamps, and Pathos Clamps can only be obtained from the Aura Worm boss fight and take quite a lot of time to get, I would say the only things that are really worth going for here for this highly valuable resource would be Orokin Catalysts and Reactors if you're really in desperate need of them. But now let's move a little bit more into the late game by talking about Archon Hunts. Archon Hunts are unlocked as soon as you're done with a new war quest, and you can think of them kind of like a later game sortie type of mission. Also here, you have a series of 3 missions with much higher levels, where at the end, you're gonna face off against one of the 3 Archons and are guaranteed to get an Archon Shard from this fight. This, I think, is the first way that you unlock in the game to access Archon Shards, and given the fact that you're limited to only 1 of them per week, I would definitely recommend doing your weekly Archon hunt as often as possible, because those Archon Shards elevate your Warframes to the next level with all the stat boosts that they can provide. But don't worry, we're gonna talk about Archon Shards a little bit more here in just a minute. First though, let's quickly go back to Deviri, where we're gonna talk about the Deviri circuit, especially the Steel Path version of it. See, once you're done with the Deviri quest, you unlock a game mode called the Deviri Circuit, where on a weekly basis, you can choose a reward path and then run the circuit to progress through it and get all the nice shinies that come along with it. For the base version of the circuit, it's mainly going to be Warframe blueprints and some other nice upgrades, definitely nothing to scoff at, but nothing that later game players will really be interested in. However, once you've unlocked Steel Path in the later game, you can also run the Steel Path version of the circuit, which is the main way to gain access to Incarnon adapters to turn many weapons in the game into the very powerful Incarnon type weapons. Now, just to be clear here, there is no fear of missing out, right? No FOMO, because all the rewards for the circuit are on a rotation, so if you don't get your weapon of choice this week, it will definitely come back a couple weeks later, and for many of those Incarnon adapters, you could also go to Cavalera on the Zeraman 10-0, and if you have the Platinum, just outright buy them from him. So at the end of the day, my personal take-home message here would be, take a look at what's for grabs in this week's rotation, and then decide if you want to go for it, or rather skip. But now that we're already talking about Steel Path stuff, the next vendor that we need to talk about is Steel Path Focused, which is also the reason why in the daily section I told you to always do your Steel Path incursions, because on every relay on the star map, you can visit Teshin and buy very valuable stuff from him from Steel Essence. First and foremost, just like with all the other vendors, you of course decide for yourself which of all these wares here are attractive for you. However, some definite recommendations from my side here would be buying Riven Ciphers, which allow you to open up a Riven without doing the challenge. This is very nice for those really nasty ones. You can also get Arcane Adapters for your equipment, a whole ton of Kuva, but most importantly, every, I think, 8 weeks if I'm not mistaken, Teshin is gonna offer an Umbra Forma for Steel Essence. And given how freaking rare Umbra Formas are, you definitely don't want to miss out on your 8 weekly Umbra Forma. So yeah, long story short, for late game players that do a lot of Steel Path, Teshin is definitely worth a visit once per week. But alright, let's now get into the really high level stuff by talking more about Archon Shards. While yes, the weekly Archon hunt is all nice and well, and you can get a guaranteed Archon Shard from it, it also takes quite some time. And there are better methods to get more Archon Shards in a shorter time frame. One of them would be the Netra Cells. Once you're done with the quest Whispers in the Wall, you will have access to the Sanctum Anatomica. In this hub world, you can talk to Tagfer, where 5 times per week you have the chance to run the mission type called Netracells, which is a very simple game mode where you pretty much have to stand in a certain position and take out a lot of enemies. And those Netracells game modes have a relatively high chance to drop you an Archon Shard on extraction. As I said, you can do 5 of them per week, but maybe, especially if you have a lot of high-level equipment, you might want to decide to only do 3 of them per week, and instead of doing the last 2, you want to do the next thing on today's list, which would be Elite Deep Archimedia. This, again, is a series of 3 missions, all against the enemies in the Sanctum Anatomica tile set, but these ones are really tough. I think at the point of writing, Elite Deep Archimedia is literally the most difficult game mode in the entirety of Warframe. Here's how it works. When you talk to Lloyd in the Sanctum Anatomica, there's a screen that tells you which 3 mission types you're going to be playing, and each of them will have a modifier that makes them more difficult. Then you will have a selection of a couple warframes and weapons that, if you take what is on display here, you will massively increase the reward pool at the end of the mission. But that's not all. Under it, you see additional modifiers that you can optionally pick if you want to, which further make the mission harder, but also further increase the reward pool of the mission. And to top it out and really get the absolute most out of the whole thing, you could also tap this button here to turn the Deep Archimedia into the Elite Deep Archimedia, which just makes everything that you selected previously even harder. If you manage to pull off an Elite Deep Archimedia run with absolutely everything selected, then you will have a very high chance to get multiple Archon Shards out of this, with a much higher likelihood of also them being Tau Forged. However, that's still not all for the Archon Shards. The next point on our list would be talking to Bird 3. Bird 3 is also an NPC in the Sanctum Anatomica, and for 30,000 standing with the Cavia, the syndicate in the Sanctum Anatomica, you can just outright buy 1 Archon Shard every single week, and the nice part about it is that doing the Netracell runs will already give you a standing that you can use to purchase those shards from Bird 3, so you're basically killing 2 birds in 1 stone. All this Sanctum Anatomica business has been the endgame routine for many players for pretty much a year now. But with the Warframe 1999 update, we got even more, about which we're gonna talk now. As part of Warframe 1999, we gain access to the Palm 2 computer terminal, where we have a calendar feature. This calendar is kind of like a mini Nightwave, where on a weekly basis you get multiple tasks to complete. Those are usually pretty easy, like take out this and that many enemies and so on and so forth. So it doesn't take all that much time to complete, but you get very nice rewards out of this, like for example, even more Archon Shards, but also a bunch of arcanes, arcane adapters, pretty much everything that a late game player in Warframe needs. So, in my opinion, once you've finished the Warframe 1999 quest and you have access to the calendar, you should definitely go and take a look at it once per week. And last, but definitely not least, we're going to talk about something that doesn't happen once per week, but once every 2 weeks, and that would be Barrow-Katir. Every second week from Friday to Sunday, the Void Trader Barrow-Katir is going to visit Warframe and set up shop in one of the relays out there. From him, you can buy a plethora of really nice stuff that I don't want to get into in too much detail right here, but he's the only source in Warframe where you can get the primed versions of a lot of mods in the game, and those are really strong, so you gotta make sure to have them sooner or later. In order to buy these, you need a resource called Ducats, which you can get from a terminal that is in the same room as Barrow himself, and on this terminal you can take primed parts that you got out of Void Relics and turn them into Ducats so that you can use those Ducats for buying stuff in Barrow's shop. Just try to check the market value of what you're about to transform into Ducats before you do so, to make sure that you're not accidentally melting away something that is really, really valuable. As you see, this list has expanded quite a bit with the release of Warframe 1999. And if you also want to know how the new 1999 upgrades change Warframe's entire meta in 2025, then definitely don't miss this guide right here. Another massive shout out to Niels V, Demon Lord Zell, Demon Emperor, Emperor Prime, Nostalgics Gaming, Turtlepeer, Lycon Shepherd, Undercanio2, Pepperwolf, Mihawky, Yagis, Hoke Hunter, Noob Phoenix, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. We see each other, hopefully in the next one, and since this will be my last vid for 2024, not only good loot, but also a great start into 2025 to each and every one of you.